Portugal has a rich history of exploration. At its height, its empire dotted all parts of the world. While living in Portugal from 2004 to 2006, I heard many tales of its legendary navigators and explorers like Henry the Navigator, Ferdinand Magellan, and Vasco da Gama. But one explorer seemed to have fallen off the public radar, Samuel Francisco Draco da Costa. He was said to have sailed in search of a new trade path from Portugal to Oceania, but neither he nor his crew ever returned. Most assumed he died at sea, but I always thought there was more to it. In 2017, I finally had a chance to return to Portugal with Amanda, where we could dig deeper into this legend via a new exhibit. Historians had uncovered new information about da Costa. There was evidence that he had successfully reached the east, making contact with India, Japan, and the Polynesian Islands. It was true he never returned to Portugal, instead settling elsewhere in Europe to live out a quiet life. Since his crew never came back either, I assume there was more to this story. More likely, they had found great riches on their voyage and decided to keep it for themselves. With this information, we took a quick flight to France, specifically the redwoods near his suspected retirement chateau. It didn't take long to find the ruins, but if there was ever treasure there, it had already been picked dry by others intrigued by the recent discoveries. Fortunately, while trekking back through the woods, I spotted something. A ring bearing the engraving Sic Parvis Magna, or Greatness from Small Beginnings. This was the well-known motto of Sir Francis Drake, an English explorer that da Costa considered a rival. Drake was well known for having a supposedly lost treasure. If da Costa had taken Drake's ring, then he must have acquired his treasure as well. Yet we couldn't find any treasure except for that ring. That was when I realized the ring had been buried upside down. So rather than meaning greatness from small beginnings, clearly da Costa was signaling small endings after greatness. He didn't die with his treasure, he left it behind before retiring. But where? The clue was hidden in plain sight. We were surrounded by ferns, and the fern leaf is the insignia for none other than Air New Zealand. The COVID-19 pandemic delayed our trip, but in 2022, finally we were able to set course for the forgotten paradise of Aotearoa. Our adventure began in the city where we searched far and wide for clues. There was plenty to see all around, but nothing seemed particularly relevant to our quest. Finally, we came across the statue of Captain James Cook, the man credited for mapping the New Zealand islands for Europe. What better place to hide a treasure clue than near the man who stole your glory? While Amanda danced on the nearby architecture, I scanned the area for clues, coming across a label that conspicuously matched the building opposite the rotunda. Sure enough, with a press of the button, a mechanism activated and revealed a map behind the building. This clearly marked a location along a river, so after consulting a map, we headed for the rainforest. With little to go on, we decided to follow a mysterious duck deeper within. Handprints hundreds of years old were a sure sign we were on the right path. Yet eventually the cave reached a dead end, only a rushing river at the bottom. Amanda discovered an important clue outside.
Water. You can't walk on it or hold it, yet water can eat away mountains, tumble cliffs, and grind boulders into tiny pebbles.
The power of water. Clearly we needed to find the source of the river deep within that cave. We weren't equipped for such a challenge, so it was time to hire some outside help. And so we joined an expedition led by local cave expert Bob McMallen.
You just needed water in your boots. Watch your head. Here we go.
Following his lead, we trudged deeper and deeper into the cave.
Here we go. Oh, hey. Hey. Oh, here's the bigger one. Here's the bigger one.
Finally reaching the water's source, we found strands of glossy silk hanging like stalactites. Turning off our lamps, we were met with an illuminating surprise. As our eyes adjusted, hundreds of thousands of glowworms became visible, dotting the ceiling like a clear night sky. The resemblance was too uncanny. Clearly, this was a star map pointing out the next step in our journey. The Constellation app confirmed that the alignment of lights matched the sky in New Zealand during the time Da Costa lived, and after synchronizing the map to the present date, we had a general destination. The problem was that while we knew where to go, we didn't know what we were looking for. We wandered aimlessly for what felt like days. Reaching a high viewpoint, we observed smoke from a distant village, one of the few remaining settlements of the Maori people that predated European colonization of the islands. With no other leads, we decided to visit the village. After all, with the Maori lifestyle being so affected by explorers like Da Costa, oral accounts of his exploits may have been passed down through the generations. Right away we passed a group that had been turned away from the village, but we pressed on, crossing the treetop bridges to the entrance of the village. After proving our peaceful intentions, we, along with a score of other knowledge seekers, were granted admission. The villagers proved to be very hospitable, even offering us a local tea. Then the village elder explained that once a year, worthy visitors were allowed into the village. We would undergo a series of games to the death, with the last survivor being allowed to ask one single question about their history. One by one, our competitors were eliminated. Just as my victory approached, I began to feel woozy. The tea had been drugged. There would be no survivors. When I came to, I found myself back on the tree bridges, being frantically urged along by Amanda. Due to her sugar-free diet, she had secretly dumped the drug tea instead of drinking it, and managed to carry me out into chaos while the other visitors passed out all around her. We ran and ran until reaching a waterfall, where the noise would drown out our sounds and protect us from our pursuers. Catching our breath, we admired in awe the power of water. Wait, the power of water? That was it! Maybe that's what we had been led here to find, the most powerful source of water. After consulting Google, it was obvious that this was what the glowworms had been pointing to. We were near Hookah Falls, one of the highest pressure waterfalls in the world. As we appreciated the water's might, I began to feel woozy from the tea's effects again.
The power of water is its ability to take any shape. Let's see what happens when you lose your foothold.
Was that a hallucination, or had the villagers opened my eyes? Whatever the case, I felt compelled to hurry downstream. Once the water was calmer, again we found some ducks to lead the way to a thermal-heated pool that the Maori historically used for bathing.
Let's see what happens when you lose your foothold.
Amanda thought I was out of my mind, but I knew I needed to wade into that water. With a deep breath, I plunged underwater, excited for what I would find. To my dismay, nothing. Soaking in disappointment, I finally got a good look at our fellow bathers.
Well done, guys. Rightio.
Bob McMallan? Had he followed us? He quickly scurried away while my eyes were drawn to the ducks that had seemingly appeared from nowhere and were now swimming directly at me. That's when it hit me.
The power of water is its ability to take any shape.
These weren't ducks at all. They were water spirits guiding us along. Water can take any shape. I thought back to the shapes we'd seen. Of course! That pointy tent thing had been shaped like a mountain. Obviously, our target was a mountain with a waterfall. We immediately set course for the mountains and passed a long overdue quiet evening planning our next move. Mountains with waterfalls were a dime a dozen in New Zealand, so which one? It was clear why Dakosha's treasure had yet to be discovered. We decided to scout the area from a higher vantage point. Our gamble paid off. In the distance was a set of twin waterfalls, their angles a perfect match for the legs of the pointy shape. We needed to get a closer look at the top of those falls. We hired a rock climbing expert, Claire Hortwitz, and underwent the grueling journey up to the top of the steep, slippery rocks. While on the climb, Claire shared her knowledge about Dakosha, claiming the Kiwi legends were that his crew had established the long-lost city of Coco. That explained why he had left his crew behind when moving to France. And it would also be the obvious location for his lost treasure, but no one had been able to find the city before. We had a few close calls with the climb, but fortunately nothing major. For our view, we were rewarded with two rival cow gangs that had been angrily mooing at each other from across a field for our whole climb. While Amanda conversed with our guide Claire, I ventured behind the waterfall, discovering a mural that seemed to portray DaCosta's crew and journeys. We were definitely on the right track. I observed aloud that the rocks around the waterfall appeared to be deliberately positioned, as if creating a map. Perhaps the rocks represented mountains, and the water the ocean, such as a fjord or sound? It could be a map to the lost city of Coco. Claire seemed very interested in these theories and wished us luck. We set course for a cruise through Milford Sound so I could confirm my suspicions. It didn't take long. Bob McMallen was here.
Probably not as good as that Hawaiian water, but, you know.
He had paid off Claire to get our information and was now in a race for the lost city. What I didn't expect was another ship. Claire Hortwitz was after the treasure herself. We hung back as the two treasure hunters raced towards the Tasman Sea. I didn't realize until then how serious McMallen was. Amanda found Claire's obliteration to be quite amusing, but I was horrified. Immediately we turned the ship around. I asked the crew if there was some distraction we could use to get away from McMallen before he turned his attention to us. They guided the ship towards a waterfall, approaching closer and closer until we were soaked by the spray. The guys worked. As we zoomed away, McMallen headed for the waterfall to see what was so interesting. I didn't realize our crew had placed a mine there. We didn't stick around to survey the carnage. I knew sinking his ship wouldn't be enough to stop McMallen if he had followed us this far. But it was a perfect opportunity to put some distance between us. I never actually expected to find anything at the Sound. It had all been a ruse to root out our competitors and see who we could trust. In actuality, I had held back some important information. The mural had an important inscription in ancient Maori script, reading, "Count the heads." While the obvious interpretation was to count the heads on that wall, that was a red herring. The pair of heads was a curious analogy to the two groups of cattle we'd seen from the waterfall. After all, a common way to count cattle is to count their heads. Counting each group of cattle revealed two numbers, 36 and 176. This gave us latitude and longitude coordinates just off the coast of New Zealand. Now we just had to find which of the many islands housed the city of Coco.
There's nothing a little music can't help. Rockin', rockin' and rollin'. Down to the beach I'm strolling. But the seagulls poke at my head, not fun. I said, seagulls, stop it now.
Wait, that one's not a seagull. You silly goof. From Mercury Bay we acquired a boat. It was a race against time as we hopped islands. Beaches with tourists were obviously not worth our time. Islands with no beaches were also out of the question, or DaCosta wouldn't have had a place to dock the ship. What we were interested in were caves or other secret entrances tucked out of public view. Most led nowhere. Frustrated by a long day of nothing, we headed for a beach that evening to unwind. There we encountered a curious phenomenon. No beachgoers were playing in the ocean waves, nor were any sunbathing on the sand. Instead, people were digging their own miniature pools. We had to dig ourselves to uncover the truth. An underground hot springs filtered up through the sand at low tide, allowing for handmade hot tubs with a seaside view. That revelation filled in the missing piece, as I recalled the vision from the hallucinogenic tea. The heat from geothermal pools was invaluable to pre-modern civilizations. The city of Coco would have been located on a volcanic island. Sure enough, Only one island in our search area fit the bill. Wanuakuta Island, a hidden cove formed by a blowhole with the secret entrance accessible only at low tide. Flesh-eating fish kept visitors away. The boat wouldn't fit there, so we brought out the kayak. After tossing some bait to lure away the man-eating fish, we headed inside. The excitement was palpable. We found a place to dock and headed into the bush. We had to make our own path as the island hadn't been touched for centuries. At last we came out to a gleaming bay that spanned the far side of the island, hidden from the mainland. Amanda went right to work looking for clues, but I was focused on something else. While the beach was deserted, there were footprints, meaning someone else had recently visited. Bob McMallan? Determined to find the city first, I put my detective skills to use and surveyed the area, spotting an old lean-to and campfire. Using a crude form of carbon dating, I determined the stick was at least 500 years old, and from the distribution of flavor, I could tell the builder had come from the rocky cliffs. I studied all the rocks until finding a set that perfectly lined together. The far rock was definitely important. After a thorough inspection, I found a slot that perfectly fit Francis Drake's ring. Upon insertion, the path to Coco was revealed. The labyrinth seemed to stretch for miles. With hallways jutting off every 100 meters, mindlessly exploring was a surefire way to get permanently lost. Each hallway was labeled with a 3-character code. I quickly identified that this had been encrypted by the classic rolling cipher technique. Using an initial shift of 13 and decreasing by 1 each character, FDB translates to SPM. Sic Parvis Magna. Yet again, the ring would be our key. Following the appropriate labels, we eventually found the exit. And with it, the entrance to the lost city of Coco. The ruins had all the markings of a once functioning city. Houses, gardens, mailboxes. In fact, it was eerie just how well preserved the city was. It was as if the city had been frozen in time just yesterday, its inhabitants taken up in the rapture. Clothes still swayed on the line. Smoke poured from the chimneys. Even the bread still looked fresh. Even more puzzling, there was no sign of treasure or wealth anywhere. Sure, there was honey, known in ancient times as liquid gold, but surely that wasn't everything. Even DaCosta's mail had nothing more than a couple pebbles. Maybe we just had to activate some hidden mechanism. That was a mistake. An earthquake began to rumble underfoot, getting stronger and stronger. We were forced to evacuate by rowboat. We watched helplessly as the nearby volcano buried the city in ash, losing it forever to history. The eruption was suspiciously short-lived. we decided to take a helicopter up to the edge of the cooled pyroclastic flow. To our surprise, the river of ash had cooled into a crystalline, icy substance. Such a scientific marvel was an indication that our treasure hunt wasn't quite finished. No longer able to trust any guides, we ducked away and hid for hours, waiting for the helicopter to give up and land. Finally alone, we scaled the glacier to the newly created peak. Beneath it, we found a dark tunnel. As we progressed, the air grew smellier and steamier. We emerged in what felt like an alien world, discovering the king and queen of thermal pools. Amanda had been quiet since the helicopter. When I turned around, I found she was already halfway across the pools, trudging away like a zombie. I called out in vain as she disappeared into the steam. Frantically, I raced after her, but the steam was too thick. She had vanished. I decided to wait for the steam to clear. When it did, the last clue revealed itself. A map. We were currently in the big thermal pool at the bottom, and an artery led to the former location of Coco, meaning the other paths showed the way to DeCosta's private residence. Using the pebble orientation from his mailbox, I triangulated the target. There was no time to waste. I trekked to the car.
I don't have Amanda anymore. I don't think I'll ever see her again.
While driving, I came across Claire Hortwitz. She had escaped the sinking ship and was still after the treasure. Having a common enemy and needing a travel companion, I picked her up. Together we crossed the final stretch, until finally, at long last, we discovered DeCosta's private cabin. Recalling the lit fire in the empty tavern at Coco, I headed straight for the fireplace. The treasure was real. DeCosta's gold was ours.
That's the way, guys. Awesome. Well done.
But we had company.
We'll start the proceedings here, my friend.
We raced away from McMallan. Leaving a quick escape down the mountain, we hopped onto the lead. Knowing we had the treasure, McMallan was desperate. He sent his goons after us in an attempt to stop us. Just when we thought we'd escaped, we encountered a trap. Fortunately, we made it far enough that we could race over to Claire's jet boat. McMallan's attempts to stop us became more and more insane, chasing us down the canyon. Claire pulled a suicide maneuver in a desperate attempt to stop our pursuers. They were, but we were now sitting ducks in the valley. When I came to, I was downstream, and Claire was dead. I stumbled alone through the rubble until coming across a bus to get back to the city. I was safe. I'd escaped Bob McMallan's clutches. But at what cost? Flying home alone, I found an email waiting from Amanda.
Dear Chris, man, sorry for disappearing on you the other day, but the truth is that I always thought this whole treasure hunt was stupid. You completely wasted my well-earned vacation with nothing but driving and stupid hikes, and I've had enough. I've gone back to live at the Mallory Village. They're actually really sweet. While you were participating in the so-called death games, I hit it off with a real stud. He's twice the man you could ever hope to be. Anyway, have fun, and say hi to your mom for me. Amanda.
I'd made it home safely, and I'd found the treasure. But was it worth the sacrifice? Oh, you better believe it. I was rich.